All right, I'm gonna try to get a little bit more light. Not sure if I need more light, but all right. You should be able to hear me okay. I did test out my audio before I started. There should be a little bit of background noise from the truck running in the background, but you should be able to hear me pretty good. And I guess let me know if it is any issues with hearing me. Okay, so I'm gonna try to get through 2 chapters today. Try to get through 2 chapters of T-Bag. And looked like the last chapter left off was 472. So I was on 472 back then. And then so now we got 473 and 474. Try to get through both of these chapters. It really just kind of depends on how long this actually is going to end up going. I have no idea how long it's going to be. Normally it'd be about, if I go pretty fast, I could probably get through 1 chapter in like 45 minutes or so. But if it ends up being like, you know, more discussion and I got more thoughts about things that's going on, then it might end up being like a little bit over an hour. So this could potentially be, I would say, probably, this could potentially be maybe a 2-hour video, maybe 2.5-hour video, depending upon how fast we get through the 2 chapters. But yeah, like I said, let me know if my audio is okay. I know there's gonna be a little bit of background noise from the truck. It's like 85 degrees out here, and I'm like trying not to sweat to death. So if I turn my truck off, I'll probably be sweating in probably about 10 minutes or so. But I did check it though. My audio should be okay. It should be all right, even with the little bit of background noise. But let's just get into it though. Well, no, let me not get into it yet, because I kind of want to talk a little bit about the last chapter to try to like refresh my thoughts, you know. But so last chapter, 472. So that was the chapter where we got Arthur, who was going through another round of his mastering fate, right? So he ends up having a life where so this time, which I still don't understand how this all happened, because I'm just like, okay, if he was with his parents, right? If he was with Alice and Reynolds, and then if he fell down, if everything happened the way that it originally happened, right? And he fell down or fell off the cliff, and then instead of Sylvia, you know, training him and all the stuff that she had did, so instead of that happening, if Cadell ended up quote unquote rescuing him, then what about his parents? His parents just think he's dead, I guess, at this point. But wouldn't he want to find his parents? Because I'm pretty sure he has fond memories of growing up with his parents till he was like, I think it was 4 years old is when he fell off the cliff, right? So wouldn't he still want to like find his parents and try to get back to him or whatever? It's like Cadell came and rescued him, and then he was just like, all right, I guess I'm with Cadell now. I guess I'm going to be with Alacria and Uncle Agrona. And I'm just like, but what if, like, he should, but I guess they didn't want to go super deep into it, because that's not the point. The point is, I guess, to experience a different life. So, but I guess all these experiences are going to be based off of him being birthed by Alice. So it has to, so he's not going to wake up being birthed in another world, right? How I kind of thought that maybe he might go to Ephiodus and, you know, come out of somebody's body in Ephiodus, right? Or he might be birthed in as a djinn, like way back in the past or something. So it doesn't seem like that's going to happen at all. So at this point, it's just going to be a different course of his life after being birthed by Alice and stuff. So that's what it looked like it's going. But with last chapter, we found out basically that he ended up using Kara as the catalyst to bring back Cecilia, and it's just kind of the same old shit. He ended up using Kara. He ended up falling in love or liking Kara. Simpy ass Nico liked her from first sight, because he's a simp. You already know how that goes. And so then that had happened, and then he was obviously jealous, and oh God, like I remember reading, like they said that he he started backing away from their relationship, right? So backing away as being friends. As soon as he caught sight of Kara and Arthur looking at each other for a little bit too long, he was done. He was like, fuck you bitches now. Like, I'm just like, what? Like, you don't just like, oh, that's mine right there. Like, no, like, you gotta actually try to pursue the person and they have to like you, you know? Like, I mean, I don't know. If you're friends with another dude, right? And there's some girl and you like her or you think she's good or whatever, like, I mean, I guess you can kind of call dibs, like, hey, you know, I'm about to go over there and talk to her or whatever. But like, if she's not interested in you, and then she's interested in your friend, like, are you gonna be like, nah, bro, I already tried, and you know, you can't be with her now because she shot me down, and I already tried, you know? This probably don't have anything to do with teammate, but I'm just saying, I'm just thinking to myself, like, so if that happened and you went up and you tried to talk to her, she was like, nah, she ain't with it. And then your friend, she was like, oh yeah, I'm liking your friend. And then your friend, like, is your friend, is he a bitch? Because if he wanted to try to get with her then, but you didn't really do anything but shoot your shot and you got smacked away, right? So, I don't know, man. I don't know. But Nico, man, like, he can't just be like, oh yeah, I like her since the first, bro. But she's not interested in you. She's interested in Arthur. And then they connect. But then why you mad, though? You should be like, oh, you know, like, I'm happy for you, you know. But Nico's a bitch, so it's not gonna happen. I don't know. I just think that's funny. But so another thing in that chapter too is that it just shows how little Agrona actually cares about Arthur and Nico. Like, he really just don't give two shits at all. Like, everything's about Cecilia. And so if it was up to him, they'll both just die and they'll just kind of move forward like that, you know. But yeah, so that ended up happening, and then I think Arthur ended up dying, Nico ended up dying, and then that was the end of the chapter. So I don't know, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy how all that had worked out. But anyway, let's get into chapter 473, Beckoning Fates. I'm not going to, hopefully you can still hear me okay, right? You know, just say like, cool, give me a thumbs up or something like that if you can hear me good. But hopefully you can hear me all right. But let's kind of see where we go from here at this point, because we got Beckoning Fates. I don't know where we're gonna go, so we're gonna see. See, I'm reading now, so my voice is probably gonna be going out and shit. It's been a minute since I've been reading. I should probably get something to drink first. I'll get something to drink later. But anyway, so Beckoning Fates. Beckoning Fates. All right. My infant years passed by, because I know, you know, my reading is just so much better than the AI reading, so we got to go with my reading this time. You know, because your boy's a professional. But my infant years passed by unattended. My life happened. Let me know if my audio's all right. I don't want to have shitty ass audio. It sounded okay, but I don't want to sweat to death, so my truck's got to be on. But anyway, my infant years passed by unattended. My life happening on a kind of autopilot as my mind focused on the problem of the Keystone and my missing companions. In this alternative reality, oh shit, my cup's vibrating. I don't want to do that. I gotta get rid of my cup. Okay. Where was I at? So it's going back to Arthur, which is cool. That's cool. I'm fine with that. Okay. In this alternative reality presented by the Keystone, even small changes seem to snowball into an entirely different or an entirely new life. Wait. Okay, even small changes seem to snowball into an entirely new life that I had to live. But as the simulated life got further from reality, or perhaps as the simulated life got further from reality, or perhaps as the person I grew into inside the Keystone became further from who I really was or had been, the part of my mind that was conscious of events outside of the Keystone seemed to go to sleep. That's what I was saying. I'm just like, it seemed like he just doesn't remember what happens when he tries to lead a different life, he just forgets about everything that he's been through. And so I guess the way that he recognizes it as the further that he gets, the further away he gets from the person that he is, the more he doesn't remember. But that's a bad thing though, because I think that the reason why his life isn't going so well when he tries to, when he veers off course, is because he doesn't remember. So he needs to find a way to be able to remember. But I don't know how he's going to do that. And this, blah, 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 blah. So, as the person I grew into inside the Keystone became further from who I really was or had been, the part of my mind that was conscious of events outside of the Keystone seemed to go to sleep, causing me to forget my purpose and even the fact that I was living out a fake simulated experience. The memories of my time growing up and taking Caleb resurfaced. So does he remember everything after so wait, maybe the purpose isn't for him to remember during his new life, right? Maybe the purpose is for him to lead these new lives, and then after he comes back from death, he remembers his experiences from those new lives, and it's going to shape what other life he creates from that, right? So remember the first life it was a little bit, he didn't meet Virion and he didn't meet Tessia and stuff, right? And then he ended up dying in the dungeon against the beast or whatever, with Professor Glory and all them that was there. So then from that experience, he ended up going to, to Agrona and stuff. And so those are two experiences. So maybe he's supposed to use those two experiences to shape his third life, and then use those three experiences to shape his fourth life, and kind of so on and so on and so on. Maybe that's the point, because he's gonna it seems like he remembers after he gets rebirth or reincarnated, whatever you want to call it, right? So he forgets his purpose and even the fact that I was living out a fake simulated experience. The memories of my time growing up and taking Caleb resurfaced. It was difficult to parse everything. I remembered it clearly, but the person I had become under those circumstances seemed so far from who I actually was that it was almost like I had someone else's dream. But where, I wondered, had that scenario come from? Is the Keystone Realm just inventing responses to my actions, or is fate somehow involved? Could the Keystone know what really would have happened, or what will happen in the future? I considered ether and fate, and I knew I couldn't completely discount this fact. Eldarinia could search through possible timelines of potential events using her magic. Certainly the Jinn could do the same. With their heightened control of ether, including the branch of Avum, still, and in comparison to the mechanism behind each of the previous Keystones, these unfolding worlds and timelines seem impossibly complex. Does gaining insight into fate require seeing how all these realities played out in response to each small change? That's what I was thinking. That's basically lines up what I'm thinking. Like, he needs to know how all these realities are going to turn out. I felt my stomach sink. And it seems like he's thinking about all this after being birthed, right? Because it's not like he can stop everything from happening and then kind of just, go into his thoughts and think about stuff. It seems like he only can think about these things as long as he remembers them, and he only remembers them after he gets reincarnated or rebirthed. I felt my stomach sink as I wondered just how many times I have to relive my life in different permutations to gain this insight. And this nerve-wracking thought brought me to yet another unnerving consideration. How long have I already been here? If the Keystone world moved at the same scale of time as I lived it, then I'd already have been inside for decades. I had to assume that time spent in the Keystone wasn't one-to-one with the outside world. Time didn't seem to move at a constant pace in the Keystone. It flies past at... Oh, I didn't know. So time didn't seem to move at a constant pace in the Keystone. It flies past at incredible speeds when I didn't focus on the world it was presenting. So when he doesn't focus, time just accelerates. If nothing else, that suggested that time was highly subjective, perhaps even an illusion entirely. What if that's it? I jolted into a scene of my toddler self flipping through the encyclopedia of mana manipulation, staring around. I jolted into a scene. So he can just think about a scene and I guess it happens. So staring around in confusion, I felt like I was born only minutes ago. I tried to draw myself back out of the life and allow it to simply play out before my eyes. Wait. Let me reread this. What if that's it? I jolted into a scene of my toddler self flipping through the encyclopedia of mana manipulation, staring around in confusion. It felt like I was born only minutes ago. I tried to... So he was just born, he was thinking about all this, came to this realization, and then he immediately advanced time to when he was going through the encyclopedia as a kid. Standing around in confusion, it felt like I was born only minutes ago. I tried to draw myself back out of the life. So he tried to just let it go on autopilot and simply let it play out before my eyes. My excitement seemed to tether me to the moment. I squeezed my eyes shut, concentrating on disconnecting from myself. Something seemed to tug at my sternum, like I had a fishing hook embedded in my chest and someone was pulling on it. My eyes flashed open and I stared around, wondering what the sensation could have been, but I saw and felt nothing obvious. Realizing I was letting myself get too anxious and excitable, I forced my small body to take several deep breaths. My mother came into the room, chattering away about me always staring at those books and how cute it was. And time began to spill away from me. In moments, I was awakening. Then, we were already heading up the mountain path that would lead us to the ambush. God damn, they moving fast as hell. It played out as it had in life. And suddenly, I was with Sylvia. Although I had ideas about how my time with her could have played out differently, I avoided changing anything. Okay, so he's letting it play out. So I'm guessing as he continues to let it play out, he's still going to keep his memories. So keep his purpose and be able to maybe he's going to notice something, and that's what's going to trigger him to get some sort of insight. You know, it's like basically if you can like replay your life, but then you observe your life happening, like that would be it'd be a lot of shit you would notice. Things you did do, things you didn't do, things you missed, close calls where you could have ended up dying or something like that. You know what I'm saying? It played out as it had in life. I suddenly was with Sylvia. Although I had ideas about how my time with her could have played out differently, I avoided changing anything, even the smallest detail, in order to test my current theory. My time with her ran out, and then my life as a boy in Eleanor was speeding past. Okay, so now he's at that point. Okay. Before I knew it, I was seeing my family again, and then Jasmine and I were adventuring together in the beach place. God damn, this shit going so fast. My time in Xyrus started, leading to Widow's crypt, the attack on Xyrus Academy, and my training in Eleanor. The war itself was already over, culminating my battle against Nico. They're going so goddamn fast. It was as my body began to fall or fail from overuse of Sylvia's will and Sylvia's impending sacrifice loomed that I had another realization. Focusing on the moment, I attempted to step back into my body and take control of the situation, knowing what I wanted to change, only I couldn't. Ain't that some bullshit, man? Like, you finally watching things and you're just like, oh, okay, here's what I want to do differently. And then, because think about it, what would have happened if he didn't overuse Sylvia's beast will? See, that's bullshit. Why can't he change it? Focusing on the moment, I attempted to step back into my body and take control of the situation, knowing what I wanted to change, only I couldn't. Time was passing by even more quickly now. With Sylvie's death, my first unintended ascent in the relic tombs, and then my time in Alacria all going by in the same breath. How is that even possible? Suddenly, I was bidding farewell to Ellie, having lied to her about where I would be while accessing the fourth keystone, and Sylvie, Regis, and I were activating and stepping into the keystone again. So this shit all happened in like a few breaths. I waited in darkness, breathless, and confused about what had just happened. Again, the light in the distance. Again, the words, "Congratulations, sir and madam. He's a healthy boy." That's crazy, man. So basically, he just goes back to where he started. If he doesn't do anything and let everything play out, it goes back to where he started. I waited in darkness, breathless, and confused about what had just happened. Again, the light. Oh yeah, that's where it's at. My mind was blank for quite a while. Time didn't slip away from me and start the loop over again, but I could feel the shock seizing control of my facilities, and instead of fighting it, I simply let myself be. So my mind went blank for quite a while. Time didn't slip away from me and start the loop over again. So basically, so it seems like, so now he's kind of like in this like stasis, like, I guess, status. So time didn't slip away from me and start the loop again. I could feel the shock seizing control of my facilities, and instead of fighting it, I simply let it be. I let myself be. I had thought perhaps that the lesson of this place was something trite, like that my life had played out just the way it was supposed to, or that I couldn't change the past. I certainly hadn't expected to lose control and get dragged along as my life repeated exactly as it had, unable to enforce my will on it at all. It was like being caught in a rushing river. I thought in wonder about the shock. I thought in wonder after the shock began to settle. But what is the point of that? How does it lead to insight into fate? I have no idea. I have no theories. I don't know. I don't know at all. I wrote an idea around for quite some time before, but achieved no new insight. Finally, I turned away from it. Again, considering a moment from the previously rushed through life as I had approached Sylvie's sacrifice. A wild thought had occurred to me. How can I exist in this life A wild thought had occurred to me. How can I exist in this life if Sylvie doesn't sacrifice herself for me, splitting her essence to be drawn across the cosmos, where she then watched my life as gray unfold? That's what I said. When we first found out about, oh, Sylvie was the one who drew Arthur into Alice, the soul of their unborn child, then that don't make any sense. Because in order for her to do that, she needed to sacrifice herself. But if she doesn't sacrifice herself, then he wouldn't exist. So it's like a whatever the fuck it's called. I think it's with a P. Not a pendulum, but a paradigm, I think. I don't know all the words. So how can I exist in this life if Sylvie doesn't sacrifice herself for me, splitting her essence to be drawn across the cosmos, where she then watched my life as gray unfold? Because if she doesn't do that, how can she then pull me away from a grown-up's effort to reincarnate me and instead place me inside this body? I looked around searching for the ghostly apparition of Sylvie that I knew must be watching me. After Sylvie had experienced my life as gray, she had followed my spirit through the cosmos as it was dragged to this world by a grown-up. At the last moment, she had forced me aside and brought me to the lay one. And that is where this simulation of my life began. It was a paradox. That's what it's called, paradox. That's what I was thinking about. Not paradigm, paradox. Although the Keystone lives always began at my birth, in reality, my own life began long before that, with my birth as gray on Earth. Oh, maybe we might go to him as gray on Earth. I clung tightly to that fact. The presence of a potential paradox was a data point, a flaw in the system, one I could identify and potentially extrapolate information from. I suppose in this place, my presence at your birth and also everything I did before birth is like a fixed point. Wait, why say your birth? I suppose in this place, my presence at your birth, and also everything I did before your birth, is like a fixed point. A distorted voice said, "Oh, that's Sylvie! Sylvia!" A distorted voice said. I turned my overly large head on the neck that still didn't support it, staring off the side of a straw-filled mattress to see the same slightly see-through younger version of Sylvie that I had encountered before. You can't change something that was already set in stone before your arrival. Oh, okay. So he can't change something that already started happening before he was born. That's why he said that his life began on Earth. So that's what he can change. He can change. But then again, he did change things. He changed how his life went out, as his life played out as Arthur, remember? So he changed it to where he didn't meet Tessia, and then he changed it to where he went with Agrona. So he did change some things. Maybe what she means by is that he can't change things midway because everything was already predetermined. You can't change something that was already set in stone before your arrival. I was looking for you, I said, meeting her transparent golden eyes. I know, she answered. I have an idea, I thought, instinctively stuffing a chubby fist into my mouth. Will you help me with something? In the context of this life, as it is currently playing out, I have just watched Gray grow from desperate childhood to how do you say that word? Disconsolate?
Disconsolate.
Disconsolate. What does that mean? Without consolation or comfort. Unhappy. Oh, so it means unhappy. Without comfort or unhappy. Okay. So, I have just watched Gray grow from desperate childhood to disconsolate kinship. I then crossed an unknowable expanse across time and began in between worlds to keep a grown-up from claiming you. That's so fucking crazy to me. I then crossed an unknowable expanse across time and began in between worlds to keep a grown-up from claiming you. She thought back matter-of-factly. I have already sacrificed everything for you, Arthur, and I would do so again and again, as many times as is necessary. So yes, of course, I will help you. Just tell me what you need. I mean, that's a smart-ass answer. It's like, I literally sacrificed, I would do anything for you. So, of course, like that's a dumbass question. Will you help me? Okay, I quietly gathered my thoughts before projecting them to her. You are part of Sylvie. Before you called yourself a projection of Sylvie, as I understood her to exist in this moment, right? You are part of Sylvie before you called yourself a projection of Sylvie. You are part of Sylvie before you call yourself a projection of Sylvie. Okay. That's correct, she confirmed, watching me curiously. But there's another part of Sylvie here as well, I continued. Her real conscious mind from outside the world, except she's sleeping. Wait, what? You are part of Sylvie before you called yourself a projection of Sylvie, as I understood her to exist in this moment. I don't know what that means exactly. That's correct. But there's another part of Sylvie here as well. Oh, okay. I think I get it. So she's the part that's like a projection, right? That interacted with his soul. But then there's another part that is in, her the little rock thing, her little cocoon little rock. And that's another part of Sylvie, and Sylvie now is with him now, with Regis. Okay, I think I understand this. Her real conscious mind from the outside world, except she's sleeping, her and Regis. That's true. My infant face scrunched up into concentration. Her mind hasn't woken yet, I think. Maybe that's because it hasn't had a time and place to do so inside the Keystone. Even in the lives where I've bonded with her, that version of Sylvie was her own personality, intact, consistent with who Sylvie was in that time frame without the memories of our life outside this place. That leaves no room for my Sylvie, the real Sylvie, to wake up. I don't get it, but we're moving on. The ghostly face watched me expectantly. But you're already only a piece of her. And in a few years, you're going to be drawn back into your own egg and reborn as that version of Sylvie. That's also true. If you attached yourself somehow to Sylvie's mind, the real Sylvie, then maybe she could wake up and act through you and then be born back into herself. I don't get it, bruh. Okay, there was a long pause and I had to concentrate very hard to keep my mind and infant body awake and focused on the moment. How? She asked eventually. I didn't really know how, but I was convinced that waking Sylvie and Regis was essential to making progress within the Keystone. They represented different aspects of ether that together with me forged a more complete so this is how they're going to get in there, because I always thought that back when they meditated in the little pool with him, I thought that they were going to go into it with him, but he needs to unlock them, and then maybe their insight, because they're two different branches of ether, will give him the insight to learn more about fate. Okay, I really didn't know how, but I was convinced that waking Sylvie and Regis was essential to making progress within the Keystone. They represented different aspects of ether that, together with me, forged a more complete insight of Spatium, Vivum, and Avum as a whole. It was my hope that, as outside consciousness, they wouldn't suffer the same effects of deviating from my regular life and could somehow tether me to myself. Okay, so they'll help him stay tethered to himself. It's all guesswork at this point, but I can feel Sylvie's mind inside my own. Can you enter my body? Maybe I can act as some kind of bridge between you. The ghostly image nodded in understanding, then drifted forward, passing through the bed and into my flesh. A shiver ran through my tiny body, and I could feel a new, comforting presence floating just beneath the surface. Wiggling my infantile body, I got more comfortable on the straw mattress and closed my eyes. Her mind is inside me somewhere. We just have to find it. I focused on the ghost's warm presence, trying to follow her within myself as she searched for the real her. Such an internal meditative practice would have been easy in my years as a quadra-elemental mage, or later, once I had an ether core. I practiced searching inside myself with mana and ether for more hours than I could hope to count. But now, in the body of a tiny baby with no mana core of my own, I realized that I lacked the facilities I would normally rely on. Do you feel any sense of her? A resonance or a pull or anything? No, but don't despair, she assured me. As my focus honed in on finding Sylvie and forging a connection between the two partial versions of her, one real, the other manifested by the Keystone, I lost my sense of the outside world. Even when my infant body slept, my adult mind remained intent on the connection between Sylvie's aberration and her sleeping mind. Time passed discordantly, with the outside world seeming to rush by while only minutes or hours passed according to my consciousness. And yet I sensed nothing concrete within myself, but the mana slowly concentrated inside my sternum, where my core would eventually form. This isn't working, Ghost Sylvie thought, her voice cutting through the fog of my hyper-concentration. We need to do more, but what? I have no knowledge of this process. I took several deep breaths, struggling to think through the building tension. In a couple of years, your spirit naturally rejoins your unborn body, held in stasis by your mother's magic. and then later you are reborn through a natural process I don't fully understand. A combination of magical reaction to your sacrifice and a tremendous amount of ether channeled into that second egg. Both rebirths then required an egg, she mused. Her mentally projected voice quiet in my head, nearly buried beneath. That is interesting too, that is an egg, right? So maybe that's symbolic for something. Her mentally projected voice quiet in my head, nearly buried beneath the thumping of my pulse. But both I cannot fucking read, yo, shit. But both, not birth, but both but both what the fuck is it? What shit, what was that? Both rebirths then required an egg. Okay. But both were also influenced by outside magic, tying back to the sacrifice of my body to rebuild yours. Right, outside magic, right? Because, okay, yeah, I got it. We need a catalyst to awaken the real me and bond me with the simulation of myself. So they need some sort of outside magical force. But where would he get the outside magical force though? But what kind of catalyst would suffice? The ghostly simulation of my bond didn't answer. She was gone. I let time pass, thinking about my next steps, until I reached the cliffside and once again saw her. Oh, maybe he can talk to Sylvia. Maybe Sylvia knows. She knows about spaceship, so maybe he can talk to her about this shit. I followed along with the necessary sequence of events that would lead me to Sylvia. I looked for a time or way to communicate with the watching ghost, but no such opportunity presented itself. And then, once again, I was tumbling from the cliffside. By the time I came to at the bottom of the long cliff, or the long fall, lying next to the broken corpse of the bandit I had dragged down with me, Sylvie was already gone. I considered simply allowing the simulation to play forward to its beginning again in order to continue my attempt to wake Sylvie. But the idea of wasting an entire life simply watching it fly by chafed at me. It was obvious now that my goal of waking the real Sylvie into the ghostly manifestation of her spirit would be a work of more than one lifetime. But there was still a lot I didn't understand about the Keystone trial. And I didn't want to waste the opportunity to learn more either. I continued on until Sylvie was reborn. Okay, so now Sylvie's reborn. I continued on until Sylvie was reborn, but she was not born with any memories either of her life outside the Keystone or our discussions before her birth. She was an infant Asura growing quickly in both intellect and power, but she was Sylvie, as she had been then, not my companion as she now slept. My time. So I thought this was going to go a little bit different. I thought that he was going to talk to Sylvia, or not. Oh yeah, I thought he was going to talk to Sylvia, and Sylvia was going to give him some information and some insight into how to get the other spiritual Sylvie connected with the physical Sylvie. Fuck, you know what I'm talking about. Fucking crazy. So I thought that maybe she might be able to help. But I don't know. My head is already kind of hurting. Okay, so my time at Elenwar and then as an adventurer and student unfolded without significant change. But I remained watchful of each passing decision to avoid the vortex effect pulling me straight through to the end again. It was difficult, as I lived through the same events yet again, to avoid second-guessing the many decisions of my life. Where could I have chosen differently? What other power could I have gained, or what piece of knowledge might I have obtained if only if I'd walked a slightly different path? Years passed before the moment I'd been waiting for came, and I sank into myself, becoming fully present in the unfolding events. Virian was nodding to me as he dug into the inside of his robe. There's one last thing you need to think about. I already knew what he was going to pull out when he opened his hand in front of me to reveal a black coin the size of his palm. The coin glimmered at the slightest movement, drawing my attention to the complex engravings etched all over it. Okay, I remember this slightly. I remember this. This the artifact that they passed down. This is one of the artifacts that were handed down to me. I had given them both to my son. Whatever happened to that? I don't think that ever got mentioned ever again. The little artifact that Virion gave him. I bet he's gonna realize what the fuck did he do with that. The coin glimmered at the slightest movement, drawing my attention to the complex engravings. Because I think that he gave him that coin back when he was explaining to Virion about how he learned. I can't remember exactly. This is one of the artifacts that were handed down to me. I had given them both to my son when I resigned from the throne. But after Aaliyah's death, he gave this one back to me, saying I should choose the next lance. I stood there silently for a moment, carefully considering the oval coin that seemed to pulse in Virion's hand. This is the artifact Aaliyah had. Oh, right, that's the thing that's gonna that'll make you turn to white core, right? I stood there silently for a moment, carefully considering the oval coin that seemed to pulse in Virion's hand. This is the artifact Aaliyah had. Yes. Bonding it with your blood and mine will trigger it, giving you the boost that allow all the other lances to break into the white stage. I know you're not an elf, but I'd be honored if you serve as a lance under me. I'll fight for you even without this bond, but I can't accept it. I may regret this, but it doesn't feel right for me to cheat my way into the white stage. I'll get there on my own. Okay, so what is the symbolism of these words? Cheat? Maybe that's what it is about cheating? These words echo back to me from what felt like a lifetime ago. It was true. I had reached the white core stage on my own, but it took so long, and when I finally came face to face with Cadell at the Flying Castle, it still wasn't enough. And soon after, I lost everything I worked so hard for when my core was broken. It would be my honor to serve. So what would happen if he takes the coin, though? It would be my honor to serve as your lance, I said at length, bending into a bow before Virion. The lance memories, and then so what? Aldir was there too, and he was like, it was a good decision to not take it because of the restraints that it makes, right? But then he might be able to know, he should be able to know how to get rid of the, no, he can't do that without ether. All right. It would be my honor to serve as your lance, I said at length, bending into a bow before Virion. The lance ceremony is the actual bonding of blood and service. Had always taken place secretly, and so it was for me. Only Virion, his son Alduin, Lance Aya Griffin, and Lord Aldir and Sylvie were present, all gathered within the unadorned chamber deep within the Flying Castle. I knelt in the corner in the center of the chamber, Sylvie sitting beside me in her small cat-like form, her side pressing against my leg. Virion stood before me, while the others were half in shadow encircling us. He held out the black oval coin. Its etched surface reflected the dim light like stars on the ocean at a night. After a few seconds, he released the coin. Instead of falling to the ground, it stayed where it was, hovering in the air between us at my eye level. What the fuck is this? Arthur Leywin, son of Reynolds and Alice Leywin, silver core quadra elemental mage, unexpected protector, and unlooked for grandchild. Wait, unlooked for wait, what? Arthur Leywin, son of Reynolds and Alice Leywin, silver core quadra elemental mage. It's difficult, man. It's difficult for me. Unexpected protector, and unlooked for grandchild. Okay. Raised among both humans and elves in Sapin and Elenor, A child of two worlds. The title of Lance must not be limited by birth or status or even race, and can only be earned through hard work, talent, and strength. In that, you may prove to be unparalleled. Virion gave a brief pause, letting his words sink in. Arthur, do you swear to serve and protect me as commander of the Tri-Union's military forces, the Airlift family, and by extension, all of the people of Elenwar, Elven, or otherwise, and never to turn this power back against me, my family, or my nation? I swear, I answered firmly and honestly. So do I, Sylvie said fiercely into my mind. As Lance of Elenwar, do you swear to stand between me and by extension, all of Elenwar? Wait. Lance of Elenwar, yeah, it's the N is silent. It's a W. And our enemies, no matter their strength or origin. I swear, I answered again. Virion's raspy voice was husky with suppressed emotion. Will you submit yourself in blood and body to my cause? I submit. So these words are spoken. Virion drew a knife and dragged it along the edge of his palm. And so they are bound in blood, as he said. His blood began to drip from his hand, hitting the black metal with small splash. Wait, I'm so confused. I don't remember this shit happening. So does he accept the coin this time? But I thought he couldn't change anything once things got flowing. I'm about to go back. So yeah, he said, I'll fight for you even without this bond, but I can't accept it. I'll get there on my own. That's what he said. He said, I'll fight for you even without this bond, but I can't accept it. I may regret this, but it doesn't feel right to cheat my way into White Stage. And it says, these words echo back for me. And he said that it still wasn't enough. And he still lost his core. Oh, okay. I think I'm understanding now. So when he said, I'll fight for you even without this bond, that was echoing from his memory of what he said in the past, which seemed like a lifetime ago. And so instead of saying, I'll fight for you even without this bond, but I can't accept it, he said, it will be my honor to serve as your lance. I think that's what happened. And Micah, that's what you're telling me. You're telling me that that's what happened. But you see how I can get confused because it wasn't really read that way. It was read like that's what he said again. Because it even got the quotes where it's just like, oh, he's talking, he's saying this. So yeah, that's a little bit confused. So somehow he's able to change it. It would be my honor to serve as a lance. So he swears, and he says, will you submit yourself in blood and body to my cause? I submit. So these words are spoken. Virion drew a knife and dragged it along the edge of his palm, and so they are bound in blood. As he said the word, his blood began to drip from his hand, hitting the black metal with small splashes. He held out the knife, which I took. I tried to imagine how I would have felt in this moment had it really happened. Isn't it really happening? The thought came back to me so immediately, so unexpectedly, that I had to stop and think about it, reminding myself that I was in the Keystone and working toward a solution for the trial. Right. He need to make sure he focused. He gotta make sure he focused. Imagine how I would have felt in this moment had it really happened. Isn't it really happening? The thought came back to me so immediately, so unexpectedly that I had to stop and think about it, reminding myself that I was in the Keystone and working toward a solution for the trial and insight into fate itself. Go on, Art, Virion said, his tone kindly. I have faith in you. Standing, I set my jaw and cut myself as Virion had. So these words are spoken, and so they are bound in blood. Sylvie echoed the words in my thoughts, except hers were directed to me instead of Virion. As my blood joined Virion's, the surface of the oval coin rippled, and the blood was drawn into it. The coin pulsed with a tremendous fluctuation of mana, and then began to fall. I grabbed it before it had tumbled more than a few inches and inspected it intensely. The artifact was heavy, smooth, and warm to touch. Beneath the black sheen, there was now a hint of deep red. There was a strange kind of resonance between the mana within the coin and my own purified mana, like they were calling to each other. I yearned to let the mana free. Virion beamed at me, his eyes sparkling with pride. I name you Godspell, Lance of Eleanor. Welcome, Lance Godspell, to your service. Lance's eyes stepped forward, her expression unreadable. You will want somewhere quiet and away from others for this next step. Virion made a low humming noise from his nose. It takes time, but you should dedicate the next few days to the process. After that, you can approach it at your leisure. Although, from what I've seen in the past, most lances find it difficult to stop once the process has started. Lord Alder spoke for the first time. I hope you both know what you are doing. So this is what he says now. I hope you both know what you are doing. I can't help but wonder if it wouldn't have been better for Arthur to reach White Core on his own. We don't have time for that. Alderman cut in. I could tell from Virion's expression that he was torn. We shall see. Mouth dry, I gave Virion a deep bow, then shallower bows to Lords Aldwin and Aldir, then Sylvie, and I followed Aya to a chamber that looked more like a forest glade than a room buried deep in the bowels of a flying castle. Good luck, she said with a coy wink before retreating back into the hallway with a sashine walk. What the fuck is a sashine walk, man? Oh, this is exciting, Sylvie said, sinking around the chamber and sniffing the plants. You're going to be a White Core mage. How long do you think it will take? We're going to find out, I said out loud. Sitting down, crossing my legs and holding the oval coin up in front of me. Everyone in the hall held their breaths as I came into view, silently waiting for me to speak. I stood wordlessly and surveyed the outdoor gallery. Listen. What if this motherfucker doesn't just grow and go to White Core? What if he actually goes to where Sylvie is at? Or not Sylvie, to where Cecilia's at, and like his core implodes. And like, what if he like skipped White Core altogether? Like, that would be crazy as hell. Anyway. Everyone in the hall held their breaths as I came into view, silently waiting for me to speak. I stood wordlessly and surveyed the outdoor gallery from atop the stage. Every person present seemed entranced, but I could hardly blame them. Bathed in light and posing dramatically next to the 2 blocks of ice, I knew I cut quite the... Bathed in light and posing dramatically next to the 2 blocks of ice, I knew I cut quite the heroic figure. My long auburn hair was tied loosely in a knot, and I was grabbed in a loose-fitting silk robe in the elven style. Completing my refined ensemble was a rich fur pelt, as white as snow, slung over one shoulder. It seemed like only yesterday, isn't that the same pelt that Virion gave him? It seemed like only yesterday that I stood before all Decathlon clad in extravagant armor that had dazzled the people. Now, standing in the column of light in my elegant attire, I knew I was more than just dazzling. I radiated an otherworldliness that matched even an Asura. Like, wait, what? I radiated an otherworldliness that matched even an Asura like Lord Aldir? Gauging my timing well, I turned my head first to my left, peering deeply at the vitral retainer encased in ice, and then to my right, repeating the action toward the second retainer. The gallery, already quiet, took on a deep, breath-held silence as I turned back to face those present. Keeping my voice low and steady, I began my prepared speech, displaying the corpses of our enemies as if they are simple trophies or keepsakes for the masses to gawk at is something I deeply disapprove of. But those of you attending this event, why was there two? Last time it was only one. The poison chick that can hop into trees and shit. Displaying the corpses of our enemies as if they are simple trophies or keepsakes for the masses to gawk at is something I deeply disapprove of. But those of you attending this event tonight aren't simple commoners. Each noble here knows that the workers, civilians, and inhabitants of your lands are waiting impatiently for news regarding this war. Until now, vague assumptions and baseless theories were the only things you could give them. I paused, letting the quiet crowd simmer as they waited for me to speak again. Born to a humble background, I have been able to climb to where I am now thanks to my family, as well as the friends I've met along the way. I am now a lance, and the youngest one at that. But I'm not the strongest. I smiled warmly to hide the lie I told. Okay. So, he is the strongest, alright? But I'm not the strongest. I smiled warmly to hide the lie I told. In truth, I was the strongest by a significant margin. But the narrative required an alternative view of events. The Lancers out there, some of whom are fighting. Wait, does this mean that he still has bad blood with Byron? Man, Byron's probably shitting himself like, ain't this a bitch? But what was I saying? The Lancers out there, some of whom are fighting battles as we speak, are far above me in power, and yet even I was able to defeat not one, but two retainers, the so-called highest powers of the Alacrian army. I paused once more, letting the excitement murmurs ripple through the crowd. As you can see, I sustained no injuries from my battle with these supposedly powerful forces, and I am healthy enough to chatter on like this amongst a crowd of nobles. I widened my smile as my comments elicited laughter from the audience. Placing one hand on the tomb of ice holding the corpse of the retainer, Uto. Oh, so he fought Uto too? Okay. I carefully shifted my gaze to where the council was seated. This is not only my offering to the council, who has granted me this role, but is also a gift that I hope you all can take home and share with your people. Figuratively, of course. Cheers and laughs erupted as I bowed, signaling the end of the speech. The illuminating artifacts turned back on as I gently descended into the stage, or from the stage, and Virion took my place. People clamped my shoulder or my back as I passed them, shouting out for me or trying to get me to stop and speak with them. When Virion spoke, however, the crowd's eyes were drawn to him, and the hubbub died down somewhat. The council thanks Lance Gospel for this gift. He has single-handedly changed the course of this war, proving without a doubt that Alacria's forces are not indestructible, as our enemy has attempted to convince you. Virion paused as the crowd cheered in response. Already, our Dwarven allies are assisting our greatest minds in reverse engineering the teleportation technology used by the Alacrians to reach our shores, and soon we will take the assault to them. The crowd roared even louder, the nobles momentarily forgetting themselves as they got caught up in Virion's speech. Soon a chant of Lance Gospel was resounding through the gallery. Through the crowd, I caught sight of a particular pair of beautiful teal eyes, shining with delight. I couldn't help but smile in return. We know who that is. We know that's Tessie. Oh shit. Silver bells and Phil Zyastir, I guess. Yeah, Zyastir. I think they're talking about Alacrian people, right? With sweet sound of their ringing, mingling the chirping of the bird song and the whisper of a light breeze through the boughs. Bright robes. What the fuck is all this? Bright robes. Pot. What the fuck is that? Peonies? Peonies? Let me see what this word is.
Peony.
A peony. What the fuck is a peony? A herbaceous or shrubbery plant of north temperate. It's a plant. Okay, it's a plant. I feel you about the Tessie and stuff. If only her dumb ass didn't run out and try to save her parents who betrayed. Listen, maybe the parents, right? Maybe Agrona doesn't take over Sylvie's body, and then because that doesn't happen, Aldwin and his wife doesn't betray the alliance, you know, the people. And then so Tessia never goes and does that dumbass shit where she's like, I gotta go save my family and blah, 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 blah. I'm really wondering how this is gonna work out. And I guess his core didn't implode, so I was wrong about how much stronger he would get. I figured he'd be stronger than all the rest of them, but I thought that he might get so strong to where his shit implodes. But anyway, what was I gonna say? Where am I at? All right. Yeah, so lilies and Hyatt, all these fucking flowers, splash red, oranges, and pinks and blues across the crowd gathered to each side of the street and perfumed the air with a bouquet of sweet scents. Elven children threw confetti of petals into the street ahead of us, transforming the paving tiles into a mystical highway of color. Beside me, Tessia giggled as she watched a young girl, no more than 3 or 4, overturn a basket full of rose petals, spilling them into a heap. Then hurriedly giggle, chubby hands through the petals to spread them out as she looked around to see if anyone saw. Tessia reached down and brushed the girl's head lightly with her hand as we passed. She turned to look at me, and I felt myself slipping away into those teal eyes, which shone turquoise in the sun. I love you, King Arthur. Wait, what? She called him King Arthur? Bruh, why she calling him King, yo? Maybe it's something that she says that gets on his nerves, and he's gonna like react like, I keep telling you not to call me that. But anyway, I love you, King Arthur, she said softly, my name barely a whisper on her lips. And I love you too, Queen Tessia. What is this? So he's king now? Wait, is he? Wait, so did they make him like the king of like the Ellenwire people? And then now they're like, did they get married? Oh my God, I don't know where we're at right now. I don't know where we're at. That's crazy. That's so crazy, yo. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. All right, where was I at? I love you, King Arthur, she said softly. My name would barely whisper on her lips. And I love you, Queen Tessia, I answered. More than anything, I yearned to lean forward and kiss her painted lips, but I held myself back. Maybe they're getting married right now. But I held myself back, submitting to the decorum of the day. In truth, I would have rather foregone the ceremony and pumped entirely, and instead spent the day just the two of us, insulated from the needs of the wider world. I admired my queen. Bruh, that's just crazy as fuck that he's saying this shit. So did he forget about his purpose and like his goal of like trying to tap into fate and stuff? It seems like he forgot. But this motherfucker's calling. And listen, it's not no bullshit ass, oh my God, you know, king and queen. No, they real fucking kings and queens now. And she said they're avoiding the ceremony, so they're getting married right now. That's crazy as hell. I wonder what else changed though. Like what else changed from So since he rejected the coin, I'm trying to think like what else had happened. So like he fought Uto, but that never happened at this point. So that mean that Ceres never had to intervene because he ended up just killing Uto, right? So Ceres never intervened from then. And then what else happened after Uto? So I'm guessing Sylvie never got taken over by Agrona. I'm guessing that Alduin and his wife never betrayed the alliance. What about Renia though? Does Renia didn't have to save his parents? So that means that Cadell probably didn't get into the castle and everything, so that probably never happened. So, man, everything would have changed. So that wouldn't have happened. Which means that at this point in the story, Sylvie would have never have needed to sacrifice her life for him. So Sylvia can continue to grow and get stronger. He already did the training, right? He already did the training in Ephiodus because Aldir's there. But Aldir probably doesn't use the World Eater technique. Well, that doesn't happen until much later. That happens when Arthur goes to Alacria. Yeah, it's quite a few things that doesn't happen. Nico doesn't come down and obliterate all the people, right? And then the soup lady chick doesn't have to fight. Trotius Flamesworth doesn't get his family, removed because of the betrayal. His dad doesn't die, right? His dad doesn't die on the wall. It's so much stuff that would change. Okay. And I love you, Queen Tessia. I answered, more than anything. I yearned to lean forward and kiss her painted lips, but I held myself back, submitting to the decorum of the day. In truth, I would have rather forgone the ceremony and pomp entirely and instead spent the day just the two of us, insulated from the needs of the wider world. I admired my queen, who was draped in a fitted wedding gown of white lace, the long train that dragged through the flowers woven with emerald and gold vines that collected the petals as we moved. Her gunmetal silver hair fell in waves down her back, pinned with golden flowers instead of the sapphire and emerald gems, and her face had been lightly painted, adding shadow to her eyes and a bright flush to her cheeks. She still has the Elderwood Guardian, right, Beast Core, right? So she still should have that. And I think she should still be somewhere near Silver Core, right? As I looked at her and fantasized about a life outside of the public eye, I also considered my new role as king. Coronated, that's how you say it. Coordinated. My first act as the new ruler of all that. Wait, what? Wait, no, wait, yo, what is this? Oh my God! I thought that he was. I thought he was the king of Elenwar. I thought that, Alduin and they got rid. Bruh, he's the king of all of Daikathon? So the humans, the dwarves, they was like, no, we're gonna just have you be king, bruh. Like, how did this even happen? Who agreed? Maybe because he's the strongest, I guess. But like, that's crazy, yo. I thought he was just the king of Elenwar and like, the elven people. This motherfucker said all of Daikathon. So he's a king all over again. That's crazy how much changed just from him taking the coin. But remember though, remember. Wait. That also means that Cecilia doesn't get reincarnated. Because in order for her to get reincarnated, Agrona has to steal her, right? And Agrona only is able to steal her because of Arthur being weaker than Cadell, Arthur being weaker than Nico, and all this shit that had transpired. But now, since Arthur's stronger than we would assume, stronger than, is he stronger than Cadell? He probably stronger than Cadell. Maybe. I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. I guess he is stronger than Cadell, right? He said that he was significantly stronger than the other white core mages. So maybe he is a little bit stronger than Cadell at this point. But so Cecilia doesn't get captured. So if Cecilia doesn't get captured, or not Cecilia, if Tessia doesn't get captured, then Cecilia doesn't get brought back. But Agrona, but he's still not stronger than the Asuras though. Like, regardless of how strong Arthur is at this point, he's still not going to be stronger than the Asuras. And right now, we know that Arthur is stronger than the Asuras. So he can still get his ass beat, even though he's king though. But maybe because he's king, maybe he makes some sort of agreement with Agrona because he feels like he has more responsibility for the people. So like maybe he doesn't fight Agrona. Maybe he teams up with Agrona and they're all, that don't make sense though. I don't know. I'm just thinking. Because he's not strong enough yet to not, like, I don't know. This is crazy though. So, my first act as the new ruler of all of Dicathlon was this very wedding. And as agreed by her mother and father and grandfather, ours was a union that was more completely aligned with, ours was a union that more completely aligned the human and elven races. But to me, it was a culmination of two lives lived. Being reincarnated in Dicathlon had been a change for me to discover who I really was, to have a family that loved me, but also to search out the kind of support and romantic love I had never experienced as Grey on Earth. I will be the king here that I could never be as Grey, I thought, brushing my fingers along Tessia's arm, which was woven through my own. And it will be because of you. This is all so sweet. This is all so sweet. I locked those words into my mind, promising myself to tell her later. And in the safety and confines of our chambers within the Aerolith's palace in Zyastir, or whatever, the flying castle will become our permanent home. But I had agreed to spend 2 full days in Tessia's birthplace as a sign of support and goodwill to her family and her people. Even though I had been a Lance of Elenward and was marrying their princess, it was still a shock for the elven people to bow before a human king. What the fuck happened to the Gladers? The Gladers just like, yeah, fuck y'all, y'all can get the fuck out of here. Like what happened to the Gladers, bro? But this still could be bad though, because I don't know if he's stronger than Cadell. And if Agrona sends Cadell, could he beat him? But then Nico still got taken, right? Nico still got taken, so Nico should still be in Alacrity. I don't know. I feel like something bad's gonna happen. I forced my gaze away from my wife as I smiled and waved at the rows upon rows of onlookers. I mean, isn't he like 18 at this point? Like, goddamn, this motherfucker get married, calling her a wife and all that shit. But I mean, he's not really 18. But I'm saying like Tessie is like 18, right? So as I smiled and waved at the rows upon rows of onlookers, I saw none of the tension that I knew was simmering beneath the surface. Instead, these people welcomed me with joyous cheers and thrown flowers. Day by day, my hesitance towards accepting the kingship faded away. I have trained for this over 2 lifetimes, I reminded myself. There is no one better suited for the role in any of these 3 countries you now rule, Sylvie thought from where she walked behind me, and I realized I must have let my thoughts slip out into our connection. Thank you, Syl. If what you say is true, it is only because I have you in my life. I wouldn't be the man I am today without you. I was careful to keep concealed my concern for her, my bond, who was like a daughter to me, and Tessia was infected with her father's poisonous magic. Wait, what the fuck? I hadn't even told her that he could take over her body and speak through her yet. Okay, so this must be around that time frame. Man, what if this is the ambush that's about to happen on their wedding night? Yo, this is wild, bruh. My mom was like a daughter. Yeah, my mom was like a daughter to me and Tessia. Was infected with her father's poisonous magic. I hadn't even told her that he could take over her body and speak through her yet. Our procession continued through the city of Zyastir, and ended on a raised balcony high in the branches of one of the great trees. Thousands of onlookers gathered on the platform spread around us. Tessie and I stood side by side, surrounded by her parents and mine, Virian, Lance Aya, and an entire routine besides. Faerith Ivasaur, how the fuck say his name is, stepped forward from the routine, or the retinue, taking the teal half cloak that hung over my shoulder, and I nodded to him and smiled, thinking about how funny and strange life could be that my once rival had become such a close friend and advisor. Stepping forward, I projected my voice with mana so it could carry easily to the spread out platforms grown into the bounds of the massive trees. With an easy smile and a baritone rich with warm confidence, I addressed my subjects as a married man for the first time. Okay, I awoke to a sharp tug of pain in my sternum. The moon spilled silver light through the window and across the floor, but left most of our bedchamber pitch black. My fingers pressed to my sternum. I jolted awake as I felt wetness. Waving my hand, I attempted to conjure a flame to see by. The chamber remained in dark. Gasping at pain and sudden horrible realization, I reached desperately for my magic. Did this motherfucker core get snatched out? There was no response. My body spasmed at the same time as the lantern beside our bed bloomed with orange light. Tessia was asleep beside me, her hair a tangled mess around her face, her limbs askew, half in and half out of the blanket, her lips curved up in a secret sleeping smile as she dreamed of something pleasant. Beside the bed, a man tinkered with the lighting artifact. This must be fucking Nico. A man tinkered with the lighting artifact, turning down the brightness slightly. There was no mistaking his marble gray skin, red eyes, and onyx horns that curved down the side of his head. Oh, this is a grown-up. There was no mistaking his marble gray skin, red eyes, and onyx horns that curved down the sides of his head, following his jawline. Sylvie, to me. I felt no response to my frightened call, only heightened my fear and disorientation. The Vitra, the same one who had killed Sylvia No, that's Cadell! Bruh! Yo! This is so fucking crazy, yo! I knew this shit was gonna be bad. I knew it. The Vitra, the same one who had killed Sylvia all those years ago, raised a finger to his lips. The gesture seemed strange and out of character, like something from a dream. Do not shout for your guards, my king, he said, his voice cold and hard. My soul fire burns within you, and I have destroyed your core. Although you still draw breath, you are, in reality, already dead. I opened my mouth to shout, but pain wrecked my body, clenching my throat shut and making my limbs spasm. Beside me, a concerned frown formed on my wife's face as she rolled over fitfully. You are a victim of your own success, King Arthur, the Vitra continued. Had you proven less successful, less powerful, less of a threat, perhaps the High Sovereign would have attempted to bargain with you. He gave a small shake of his head, an expression that was almost, but not quite, a smile across his face. I'll be honest. I would have liked to see what you were capable of, but the High Sovereign thought a simple assassination best. Through the pain, I reached for Sylvie again, but I couldn't sense her mind. I didn't know if she could even hear my thoughts. Still, you have served your purpose, the Vitro mused. The way is paid for the legacy. But why, though? But I guess he got her this way, right? His hand reached out towards Tessia, and I found myself powerless to stop him as he rested his outstretched fingers on her neck. Black ghostly flames breathed her hand for a moment that felt like an eternity, then flowed down into her like some smoke through her pores. My wife's beautiful eyes snapped open, her mouth stretching wide in agony, but only a brief choked gasp escaped her. Tears spilled from her eyes before they rolled back into her head, and she slumped. No, I moaned, extending a trembling arm toward her. The world went white, then black, then gray, slowly faded back in. The bed beside me was empty, and I could no longer see the Vitro, but I couldn't turn my head to search the room. Vaguely, I was aware that I was now laying in a wet pool, the fine sheets of my royal down mattress sticking to my skin. Don't worry, boy, the Vitro's voice came from somewhere beyond the edges of sight. Your queen lives and will continue to do so, after a fashion. I am told she will become one of the most important people in the world. I closed my eyes, pushed out a shaking breath, and failed to draw in another one. Alone, in a bed full of blood, I felt the soul fire burn through the last of my life force, and everything went dark. And then, within the black, a faint bit of distant light. The light grew closer and closer. Congratulations. It's a boy, sir, madam. He's a healthy boy. My eyes struggled open, and I cried. I howled with the despair of waking and realizing that the life I lived was a dream. A beautiful, wonderful, horrible dream. Mourning the version of myself, of the love I had been allowed to share, that I had withheld from myself in my real life, I could only plead with the keystone. Enough, I begged. I don't want to keep doing this. Please, that is enough. Let me go. Man, oh man, that is fucking crazy. That is crazy as hell. That is so wild, yo. Holy shit. So it seemed like by accepting the coin, right? So he said that, so he was a threat. He was a threat to get too powerful, and him being king, he was too successful. So Agrona was like, yeah, I'm not gonna bargain with you. I just need to take you out. And so he took him out. Damn. But here's my thing though. I guess my question to you guys is this. So this is obviously a sneak attack. Now, when it comes to strength, right? You want to use sneak attacks as like a, you know, you're one-upping somebody, right? Because it's not really fair, because somebody can sneak attack you and you might be strong, you might be the stronger person, but because they caught you in a vulnerable state, right? It was a sneak attack, then you can still get killed or you can still lose. So my question is, do you think that he was strong enough to fight and defeat Cadell in that moment? If it wasn't a sneak attack, if you didn't find him in bed and use his soul fire, could he have defeated Cadell? I don't think so. But I don't know. It was a sneak attack. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think he would have been able to defeat him. I don't think he was strong enough. I think that he could defeat the retainers easily, but we know that the difference between the sides and the retainers is completely different. And they've never even met a scythe yet. They only been experiencing retainers, so he wouldn't even know what that's even like. So yeah, I don't think that he could have. I don't think he would have been able to defeat the retainer. I mean the sides at all. Neither one of them. So I think that's how he was able to get snuck on like that, because he didn't have the senses and the magic control or whatever, and he didn't know how to get rid of the soul fire, and yeah, he would have lost. So that's crazy, man. I thought they was going to assassinate him on his wedding night, but no, they did it when he was asleep. That's so crazy, man, that he was a fucking king of all of Dicathi. Like, that's so wild. That's so wild, yo. But yeah, Arthur needs Regis' help in order to defeat Cadell. Yeah, he needed Regis' help at that moment because he lost control of his emotions, right? Because remember, he ended up fighting Sloppy and stuff because he was so angry at trying to kill Cadell because of him killing Sylvia that he was fighting Sloppy and stuff. So, I mean, yeah, ultimately he would have needed him for the what's the flames called? I forget what the fucking flames are called. But he needed those flames in order to kill him. I guess. I don't know. We don't know for sure. We don't know. So I'm not even gonna say that because we don't know how that fight would have gone if he was in more control and if he didn't see. It don't even matter. It don't even matter because that's so crazy, man. Like, I feel for him though. I feel for him. It's just like shit. Destruction. That's what it's called. Thank you. Destruction. I forget everything. But yeah. So that's fucked up. That's fucked up. So it's crazy. Agrona considered him to be successful. Like, oh, he succeeded. He was more successful and he had a lot of potential, and he was a threat. And so Agrona decided to take him out. Whereas before, he wasn't a threat, which is why he was willing to bargain with him. He was like, yeah, you know, you could do this and that or whatever. Yeah, he just needed to get more powerful at that point. I don't know. I mean, so what happens at this point now? So, I mean, basically he need to... I mean, he still haven't even figured out how to get Sylvie's spiritual self or whatever into her body. Like, he still needs to figure that out. But let's move on to the next chapter. I'm gonna try to get through this within like 2.5 hours, maybe. Hopefully. But let's just go to the next chapter. You said next chapter is gonna be peak. Okay. I wonder if we're gonna stay with Arthur. Are we gonna stay with Arthur? So, cracks in the ice. Veray. Okay. I was wondering where Veray been at. Because Veray's been the strongest. And they've leveled up their cores and shit. Hey, you know, I wonder. So that means that this, look, think about it like this. Arthur at that moment when he got killed, right? When he was, you know, King Arthur with Queen Tessia. So Arthur in that moment, he wasn't even stronger than the Lances are right now. Because right now, Micah and Byron and the rest of them, they can go toe-to-toe with a scythe now. So he wasn't even that strong. So, yeah, he was just not up to par. He was not up to par at all. Like, he was the strongest out of everybody compared to their strength, but if you compared it to the size, and not even fucking that, the size don't even include the race. Like, he could have fucking sent a squad of race, and Arthur would have been a wrap, yo. He didn't even need to send a scythe. He had so many different options. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how overmatched they were with this whole fight with Agrona. That you just think back and you're just like, Agrona was just playing around with him. Like, he could have sent a team of Wraiths, sent one scythe, and wiped out everybody. It would have been a wrap. Nobody would have been able to do anything. So anyway, Veray. If the army attacks, I don't think we have the forces to hold them back. Of course we don't. We haven't had a chance to recover from the war and the Battle of Bloodwater. Without the dragons, we might as well throw open the gates and let the enemy march right on in. Spoken like a true Bainar, whatever. How dare you, madam? House Banir, I'm gonna say Banir, is the oldest and most loyal supporter of House Glader. And yet, Sir Lionel, your brother was part of a treasonous plot to take over the wall and and hold it alongside the Flamesworths for his own personal enrichment. That was enough. Lord Curtis didn't raise his voice in anger. Instead, he just sounded tired. I glanced at him, fuck it. I know how to say this word. I'm too tired to say it. Serendipitously, whatever. I'm just gonna skip. From the corner of my eye, he had dark bags. Let me see how they say it.
Surreptitiously.
Wait, what?
Surreptitiously.
Surreptitiously? Alright, whatever. From the corner of my eye, he had dark bags under his eyes. His usually impeccable mahogany hair was disheveled, and there was a certain softness to the way he slumped into his chair that reminded me intensely of his father. Beside him, Lady Kathleen looked as she always did, rigid, sharply aware, and immediately present in the conversation. Her dark brown eyes gave away no hint of her thoughts, and, unlike her brother, not a single jet black hair was out of place as it framed her pale face and cascaded down her straight back. Even the manner the two royals exuded was the polar opposite. Curtis's flickering and fiery manner seemed to ebb and flow with every comment, while Kathleen's was still and stoic, just like her. Across the ordinate table from the royal siblings sat their counsel. Otto Banier, a short and pudgy man with particularly unhealthy-looking skin, glared at Lady Vesta of House Lambert. The older woman, who looked every bit the part of the elder stateswoman of her house in her puffy purple and maroon dress and her silly feathered hat, did not glare but simmered with derision, one brow raised and her lips slightly pursed. Sir Abraham of House Astar, oh, fuck these names, a man of middle years with a punchy belly and a patchwork beard from the scar across his left side, cleared his throat uncomfortably. I struggle to see how Otto was wrong here, Vesta. Look at the facts. He stabbed the mahogany table top with a calloused finger, his manner wavering and suppressing nerves. We put everything we had into guaranteeing a relationship with the dragons, but they've up and left us to die. Arthur Leyland's mysterious strategy has spread Catherine's defenses thinly across the continent. We're facing an opponent who has already defeated us once, and handily, I might add. The only positive development I can see is that the Alacrian forces hasn't turned their attention to Edison yet. I'm actually kind of proud of myself I did that without stumbling over these words. Anyway, Miss Mountbatten trembled as she leaned forward over the table. The elected voice of the commoners, Dee, looked more like a baker than a royal counselor, but she was normally a voice of reason within the council's politics. I still don't understand. You promised that the dragons would protect the people. Jackin of House Maxwell let out all these fucking people. I don't care about these names. Let out a booming laugh, causing a surge of mana to ripple through and around him. The retired warrior was a big man, and when he wished it, his voice easily swallowed everyone else's. They've left us proper fucked. It's clear we were utter fools to ever put faith in them. A chorus of admonishments erupted around the ornate table, but Jackin waved them off with his customary disregard for the expected niceties. This isn't helpful. The council chamber fell silent as Lady Kathleen's icy voice cut across their arguments. All eyes turned to her, even her brothers. Her steady gaze swept across the councilors. You forget yourselves. All of you. Our purpose here is to serve the people of Edison and all of Satan. This panic, infighting, and fatalistic complaining hardly does so. We are not defeated, so we are not abandoning our duty. She paused, inviting the counselors to respond, but the chamber was the quietest I have ever heard it. Within the silence, though, was a palpable tension that I sensed as a kind of focusing of the multiple mana signatures. An expectant shiver ran through my core, and I shifted uncomfortably. We have made mistakes, all of us, she continued, some of that sharp edge leaving her tone. Curtis and I were eager to believe the dragons were our salvation, and perhaps we have allowed that desire to cloud our judgment. But you all speak as if hope is lost when there's a greater plan unfolding that we don't fully understand. Otto Banier or whatever scoffed when Kathleen's answered with a piercing glare. The shifty little man at least had the good graces to appear apologetic. My Lady Glader, it would be a fool's hope to trust that Arthur Leyland can stop what is unfolding. I mean, listen, bro. I don't understand them at all. Arthur has saved everybody's life. Like, this is crazy. Everybody's just like, oh no, it's be a fool to trust Arthur. Like, what are you talking about? Arthur's been saving everybody from the jump. Anyway, let's see what she says. Was it not Arthur who warned us not to trust the dragons? Catherine interjected. I am ashamed to have allowed the malcontent of this council to convince me that it was Arthur who posed the danger over the dragons. Lady, let's not act as if Arthur Lewin is infallible. Bannier countered. If the messages we have received are correct, the Alacrians are ignorantly imprisoned on the other side of the wall, have turned against us, and the Alacrian forces have struck out across the most of Dacath. The only saving grace at all is that they seem to be focusing their efforts on finding Lewin himself. Florian Glader, third cousin to Curtis and Kathleen, brushed his fingers through his hair that matched Curtis's in color before speaking for the first time in several minutes. And that, I think, is our strategy. We have already evacuated the surrounding countryside, bringing everyone within 50 miles behind the walls. We have provisions to last through a siege if they attempt such a thing, which will be unlikely since Lance Godspell is not within the city anyway. We just need to stay within our walls and wait. Perhaps it would be best if the man were caught, Vesta said tentatively, as if she were verbally testing the waters of this line of thinking. Bruh, okay, so Arthur gets caught. Let's go with that. Arthur gets caught, and then what? He's gonna just leave you alone? Like, oh, if we give you Arthur, will you spare our lives? Oh, I'll take him. And then once he takes him, like how it is in every other movie or show or anything you read, once they give the person what they want, please spare us. We'll give you them. We'll give you what you want. Give them to him. And then, oh, it's like, thank you. And then slaughters everyone. That's what happens. But anyway. So perhaps it would be best if the man were caught. My gaze jumped to Curtis and Catherine. Curtis leaned forward and rubbed his chin with his fingers, a small frown creasing his brow as he considered his advisor's words. His mana jumped and sparked like a fire struggling to catch in wet wood. Beside him, his sister had frozen, her mouth open slightly, a crack in her carefully managed facade. Finally, the lady from House Lambert speaks sense, Otto said, throwing up his hands. That's a terrible thing to say, Miss Mountbatten said at nearly the same time. Now, D, it may seem cruel, but think about it, Abraham interjected with a gesture of peace. Arthur Lewin has been antagonistic toward the dragons and disrespectful to Lord and Lady Glader. Disrespectful? How? He literally gave them their positions. Like, does he not remember that Ediston was completely taken over and Arthur single-handedly took it back over? Like, what the fuck? Man, these people, bruh. These people. I can't. Anyway, so let's listen. So Arthur Lewin has been antagonistic towards the dragons and disrespectful towards Lord and Lady Glader. If the enemy wants him this bad, finding him might just give Guardian Sharon enough time to settle whatever emergency he's been called to. Let me reread this. If the enemy wants him this bad, finding him might just give Guardian Sharon enough time to settle whatever emergency he's been called to so he can sweep the rest of the Alacrians from the continent. The dragons spit in your face and you open your mouth to drink it like fresh spring rain. Bruh, yo, that is a very detailed insult. Like, that's not like, oh, piss on my leg and tell me that it's raining. No. Like, oh, they spit in your mouth and you drink it like it's fresh spring rain. Holy shit. Oh, that's crazy. That is funny, man. I swear that is funny as hell. Yeah, they do. Jasmine's dad. Yeah, I think talking about Trotius Fansburg. That's funny as hell. Jakan growled, shaking his shaved head. I don't care much for this high and mighty Lewin feller, but the dragons have shown us just how much they think of us. Bro, they wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for Arthur. Like, do they not understand this? They would have let them get slaughtered. It's crazy. But the dragons have shown us just how much they think of us. How many of those scantily clad, how many of those scaly bastards are in Decathlon? And they don't leave even one to guard Lady Kathleen and Lord Curtis. Nah. You have to be a complete moron to expect that they'll be back to help. I'll lean forward, pressing his palms into the tabletops. Perhaps, but that doesn't discount the rest of the plan. We know where the Lewin boy is hidden. We could eliminate two threats at once if we offer to trade that information for a promise of peace. Bruh. These motherfuckers. The fact that they're even suggesting this should be treason by itself. I swear. Like, that shit should be treason just to even think about it. They should be getting heads cut off right now. I do agree with you, by the way. Arthur needs to be king. I said that from the jump. I said that if the motherfucker just takes on the mantle as king and just control everything, because he already controls everything now, it's just like he's like de facto king at this point. I think things will go much smoother. I don't think he'd be getting this level of disrespect. I don't think that it would be people questioning him so much. It wouldn't be like, oh, you know, am I going to listen to what he says? He just needs to take over. Like, can nobody stop him anyway? I just don't understand why isn't he getting more gratitude and more respect? Like, the motherfucker fought and saved him back when he was a lance and got rid of Uto, right? He got rid of Uto, and then after that, the motherfucker goes and he makes an alliance. Well, he kind of does an alliance or whatever with Kezis, but then after that, he ends up saving Tessia. All those times when she was running, trying to get herself killed. And then he comes back and saved the people in the sanctuary by defeating Tacy. And then he comes back and he rescues everybody and takes over all the places that were taken over by the Alacrian people. And then he makes a deal with Kezis and is able to get the dragons there in the first place to protect them. I mean, he's done so much, man. I swear, these people don't even deserve it. They don't even deserve all the shit that he's done. But Kathleen knows, so Kathleen should back him up. So we can eliminate two threats at once if we offer to trade that information for a promise of peace. And then it's just like, yo, you're expecting for Agrona to keep his promises? Like how stupid are you? It's like the same promise, right? The same promise that Alduin and his wife got from Agrona back when they betrayed everybody and let Cadell into the castle, right? And then they ended up getting killed. Like, oh yeah, that same promise too, right? Look how that worked out. Oh, and also the Gladers. The Gladers was already working with him to give them Arthur in the first place, so they already betrayed everybody too. Like, it's just, man, it's just, so the dwarves betrayed them from the jump, and Aldur took them out, and then the Gladers betrayed them, and then they got taken out at the same time that Alduin and his wife betrayed them. Like, man, these motherfuckers are just like, haven't they learned? Like, when you trust Agrona, what ends up happening? You end up dead. That's what happens. Anyway. Kathleen's head tilted to the side and her eyes narrowed dangerously. So your suggestion is that to offer the enemy what they want and beg for them to just leave us alone? It would be a more sensible path than using the bodies of your people as shields for a man who refused to even explain why he expected us to die for him. Okay. There was a sharp scraping noise as Kathleen pushed her chair back from the table and stood suddenly. You go too far, Otto. Go, now, and be glad that I'm allowing you to do so, instead of locking you in the palace dungeon. Kathleen's glare was bitterly cold and empty of emotion. Her lack of anger only made the expression more cutting. Lady, Otto stared at Kathleen with wide eyes as his voice left him, his mouth continuing to puff mutely. Kathleen, Curtis started, reaching a placating hand toward his sister, but she silenced whatever argument he was preparing to give with a single look. Curtis cleared his throat and stood, gestured for the chamber doors to be opened, then lingered beside them and spoke briefly to each counselor as they left. I followed behind Florian, but Kathleen spoke my name, stopping me and indicating I should stay. When all the others were gone, Curtis also dismissed the guards and then closed the doors behind them. He regarded his sister warily. That was poorly handled, Kathleen. These people are just as powerful as we are, perhaps even more so, and we owe much of our success to them. I do not see that as the benefit you seem to. Kathleen answered matter-of-factly. They were out of line, and they needed to be reminded of their role here. Curtis raised his hands in a gesture of peace. I'm not suggesting we follow through with Otto's plan, of course, but they aren't exactly wrong to be scared. Who gives a fuck about them being scared? Like, who cares? Kathleen took a deep breath, outwardly settling her nerves. I'm afraid Otto's desire might come to pass even without our interference. According to our scouts, the Alacrians are growing near to finding the hidden cave. Our Earth attribute mages covered it well, but we can't know what kind of magic these invaders may be using to search for Arthur. Kathleen's eyes met mine. Lady Veray, I would like to know what you think we should do. My voice was slightly rough from, disuse? Yeah, disuse. And I had to swallow to wet my throat. I do have a suggestion, but I'm not entirely certain you will like it. They don't keep no promises, man. That's what I'm saying. Like, look how everything turned out. With all the other people who trusted the Agrona and Kesses and shit. I mean, even Kesses kept his promise, but his promise being kept also had to do with him having other political and, other plans that he was putting into place, even while he was quote unquote keeping the promise. Kathleen allowed herself the smallest of smiles, and Curtis crossed his arms and regarded me with undisguised concern. Go on, Kathleen said. Arthur made one thing clear to us. I began calling back to our last conversation with him before he went into hiding. He asked us to do everything in our power to ensure that his location was not discovered. With the Alacrians searching the surrounding wider lands, it seems like only a matter of time. We need to draw their attention in a different direction. What exactly do you have in mind, Lance? Curtis asked, stiffening. The coastline to the southwest is full of natural caves. The Alacrian forces haven't yet concentrated on them, but we have reports of a few scouting parties moving in that direction. I paused, knowing how the next part sounded. I will fly there immediately and strike, acting as if I'm preventing them from searching the coast. You will use yourself as a distraction? Curtis asked, his voice full of disbelief. Absurd. I know how powerful you are, Veray, but you can't hope to fight off an entire army on your own. What if they are led by retainers, or sides, or even wraiths? I acknowledged, though I didn't speak the thought aloud. The harder fought the battle, the more it will sell the diversion. You are too valuable, Curtis answered. Bruh, what they should be saying is that Arthur is more valuable than anybody else. Let me get some fucking light, because I'm dark as shit now. Alright. You are too valuable, Curtis answered, shaking his head and taking a step closer to me and Kathleen. I won't allow you to risk yourself for Arthur, especially since we have received conflicting reports of his actual location. Of the actual location. Kathleen's brows rose. Arthur has asked us to buy him time. If he had a reason to make us believe he was in that cave, then it doesn't matter if he is actually there or not. We must act as if he is. Of course it matters, Curtis countered immediately. If he isn't there, then we don't need to risk Veray's life or the lives of the soldiers behind the walls. See, my thing is this, though. Like, Arthur's been risking his life from the day one. And then now you're just like, oh no, we don't need to risk our lives. Like, he saved your lives time and time again. You should already be dead. Like, what difference does it make? So of course it matters. If he isn't there, then we don't need to risk Veray's life or the lives of the soldiers behind the walls. And yet, giving in and letting the Alacrians pass will allow them to search their next destination even more quickly, Kaplan countered. That is a problem for the defenders of those locations then, Curtis burst out, crossing his arms defensively. A sudden crack silenced all three of us, and even Kaplan seemed surprised as she pulled back the hand that had just slapped Curtis's face. Oh shit. Hold on, let me reread this. And yet giving in and letting the Alacrians pass will allow them to search their next destination even more quickly, Kaplan countered. That is a problem for the defenders of those locations then. Curtis burst out, crossing his arms defensively. A sudden crack silenced all three of us, and even Kathleen seemed surprised as she pulled back the hand that just slapped Curtis's face. Mana seethed between them, rearing up like two opposing blade-hayed serpents. But the shock and hostility melted away almost instantly, and Kathleen continued. Bruh, you can't just be slapping people, yo. Like, we not about to let you just slap people like that. Like, that's kind of crazy. Are we not meant to be leaders and the hope and strength of Catherine? Not just of Edison. Don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Do not become our father, Curtis. Oh, that's why she was like, that's why she did that. The royal assemblies regarded each other for some time. Curtis' hand still pressed against the cheek Kathleen had slapped. Although his face was pale, except for the red mark where his sister's hand had struck, his face faded to a kind of steely grit, and he nodded, his eyes hardening with determination as he met first Kathleen's eyes and then mine. Let's discuss the specifics of this plan. Please, Veray continued. With no words to waste, I provided the details of where I would strike and what my fallback plan was in the event that I became overwhelmed. And within an hour, I was flying southwest along the coast. I kept high within the cloud cover. Cold moisture collected on me, but I didn't feel the chill. My mind remained abuzz with considerations of how the assault could have unfolded. By the time I sensed the Alacrian search parties below, I felt confident in what was to follow. Coming to a stop high above my targets, still shrouded with a dark cloud, I directed my senses toward the dim mana signatures below. 4 battle groups moved together, scouring the countryside. By the way their formation moved, I was certain that at least 2 of the mages were sentries. Spells were active, the crackle of their mana present in the atmosphere around the Alacrians, sparking like a lightning spell across the surface of water. A deep, unfocused piece of me wondered what it would be like to see the individual particles of mana the way that Arthur could. If he were present, could he tell me what the spells were doing just by looking at the way the mana formed? But the entire reason I am here is because he can't be, and I need to ensure that he remains protected. The moisture within the cloud condensed. See, the Lancers have way more respect for Arthur than the fucking people, and the people is the one that Arthur's been even fighting for from the jump. Like, that shit is crazy to me. The moisture within the cloud condensed into the needles of ice, each one a foot long. These needles radiated or rotated around me as I drifted to the bottom of the cloud and emerged into open air. I already had a strong sense of exactly where my targets were, and it took only a moment to visually hone in on the 16 Alacrians. Aiming very carefully, I launched a series of needles. Needles in a sudden hail of death. The barely audible cries floated up to me on the wind as half of the Alacrian mages crumpled, killed instantly by the strike. Shields of wind, water, and fire erupted colorfully over the remaining Alacrians just as a second volley of ice spikes struck them. A beam of sickly green mana smeared through the air toward me, but I wove around it easily before catching a series of blue fireballs on a heavy shield of ice. I countered with more spells, which deflected off the interlocking shields. The Alacrians' shouts were unintelligible, but their panic was clear. They could do little aside from huddle beneath their shields with their last two casters hurling weak spells. Pushing mana into my eyes, I peered through the distortions in the air to watch them closely. A woman I'd identified as a sentry was channeling the spell. Her attention turned to the east, while a striker rapidly scrawled across a crumpled parchment with a shaking hand. I hit the shields with more ice spikes, making sure not to overpower the mages conjuring them. The sentry's eyes snapped open, and she shouts something I couldn't make out. Words sent, and the cavalry should arrive soon enough. Waving a net of fine, nearly invisible ice filaments, I cast it over the remaining enemies. A couple of strikers darted out of the way with a burst of speed, but the others came together, hunkering beneath their protective barriers. The fine filaments sliced right through the mana and eviscerated the handful of soldiers beneath it, dousing their spells in an instant. God damn, she's taking them out so easily, yo. That's pretty wild. The two strikers sprinted away at impressive speeds. Instead of cutting them down, I floated back up into the clouds, vanishing the same way I had appeared. Then, I prepared for the next stage of the battle. My first series of strikes had been precise, killing the strongest mages and most of the casters, while only wounding the others. The following barrage had been weakened purposefully, pinning the Alacrians down, but giving them time to send word for reinforcements with whatever artifacts or magic they had at their disposal. With that concluded, there was no reason to allow them all to live, but letting the final two strikers escape provided a backup in the event that the earlier messages went awry. It should also, I calculated, provide a sufficiently believable outcome considering the image I was attempting to portray. The dense cloud, heavy with moisture and already bitter cold, was the perfect staging ground for me to prepare for the next phase of this diversionary battle, yeah. Drawing on the atmospheric mana, I felt it rush into my core and began to purify. At the same time, using the technique Arthur had taught me while removing the Asura's limitations on my growth, I began releasing my own purified deviant ice attribute mana, which clung to the vapor that made up the cloud. The sensation of mana rotation never failed to conjure goosebumps along the back of my neck as I absorbed mana, channeled it, and continuously clarified my core simultaneously. Even the simple act of clarifying my core felt strange and exhilarating after spending so long in the white core stage with no change. The clouds around me began to harden, freezing into a kind of cocoon or shell, which my mana kept stationary. As that cloud froze, the effect extended outward, the ice crawling over and through each vaporous mass, hardening and growing heavy in the air. It required a meditative mindset to utilize mana rotation in this way, and my mind was fully only of the act itself as I froze the very sky. I experienced no sense of time focusing so intently, and so it was with a slight jolt of adrenaline that I felt the approaching mana signatures in the distance. At first there were only two heavy, potent auras. The mages exuding them were confident enough that they approached openly, without attempting to suppress their signatures. I did not recognize these signatures, but based on the strength that they exuded, I thought they couldn't be scythes or wraiths. Confident as they seemed, the approaching signatures halted well away from where I had defeated the scouting party, trailing behind them only sensible from this distance as their numbers grew. A host of Alacrian mages gathered as well, hundreds at least, perhaps thousands. I thought in a detached kind of way. Once, perhaps, I would have balked at the idea of facing such a host. After all, I hadn't Lance, Aaliyah, and her entire regiment been defeated by only a single retainer and a much smaller force of Alacrian mages, and yet so much has changed since those days. Okay. I think she's gonna kill a scythe, but also die. Oh shit. Okay. You got predictions. Tate. Okay. Or someone powerful. If she still had those limiters in there. Wait, if she still had those limiters in your white core, yeah, I would say she. Oh, I don't think she's gonna die. I don't think she's gonna die at all. I think that we're gonna be a bit surprised at the fight that Viray is gonna have with whoever it is she's about to face. She said it's not size or not race, so who the fuck is it? Tense against the strain of holding such a great weight of mana formed ice aloft, I waited. Continuing to utilize mana rotation, I did my best to suppress my own mana signature and disguise my mana usage within the dense, heavy atmospheric water and air attribute mana. The retainers lingered at a safe distance, likely conferring with their sentries or the head of their various battle groups as they searched for signs of danger or hints regarding Arthur's whereabouts. I breathed deeply and settled my mind. Patience was a skill I had cultivated from a young age. The patience of the iceberg, of the permafrost. Chanted silently to myself. More and more Alacrians gathered until an entire army waited on the horizon. Then finally, at some shouted order, they began forward. The retainer stayed back. I was surprised to note leading from the rear, but that suited my plan well enough. Several battle groups collected around the corpses from earlier, investigating the evidence of our brief battle, but most marched toward the coastline behind me. They moved purposefully and with care, their shields conjuring protective barriers of every element and design, while casters and strikers had their own spells at the ready, mana channeling into many hundreds of Alacrian runes all at once. More and more of them entered the shadow of the frozen clouds, but I waited. The forefront of their lines passed beneath me, and I felt the touch of probing mana as the spell of some century sought me out. A ripple ran through the army, and I felt as their collective attention turned fearfully skyward. Gritting my teeth, I gripped the frozen clouds within my power and shoved downward. The ice slipped past me as it fell, leaving me floating above the falling floor of rippling gray. The clouds plummeted, their unnatural movement looking momentarily strange, like a child's drawing instead of the real thing. I sensed the barrage of spells from below. Even though I could not see it past the solid gray mass, bolts of fire and jets of burning acid burned into and through the clouds, but did little to interrupt the descent. Hundreds of shields flared bright. Tons upon tons of solid ice struck the ground with a cataclysmic shockwave, and I forced mana to my ears to, what is that? Is that to deaden the explosion of sound? However the hell you say that shit. The frozen clouds shattered, becoming a maelstrom of razor-sharp blades of ice that flew in every direction. I pulled the shards back and forth across the shattered earth, and my enemies were as stalks of wheat beneath a thresher's blade. Mana signatures winked out like stars hidden beneath storm. That's crazy as hell, bro. She's just killing so many people. The attack lasted 10 seconds, no more. From my vantage, hundreds of feet in the air, the ground gleamed in blue, white, and red. Snow and spikes of ice, as if a sudden and violent storm had raged, littered with blood-soaked corpses of hundreds of Alacrian mages. A black bolt of mana careened toward me from the distant figure of the retainer. I ducked beneath it, but it exploded, filling the sky with an obscuring shadow that stole not only my sense of sight, but seemed to smother my feel for mana also, well and truly blinding me. In the darkness, something hard and cold gripped my arm and clutched at my throat. The ice forming my left arm cracked, sending a shiver of phantom pain up into my shoulder and chest. A frozen nova erupted from me, and the grasping limbs shattered. Freed from their unseen clutches, I dove beneath the darkness. Frost crept across my skin and armor, cladding me in a frozen barrier that deflected a burning glaive that glanced off my ribs before spinning around and returning to the hand of the man who had thrown it. The impact sent a jolt through me, and my core ached. Not an ache, a shudder. With the force of my focus on maintaining my defenses, a statuesque man in black and crimson plate armor flew only 100 feet away. and he caught the glaive as it returned to him. Flickering with dark fire around his gauntleted fist, silvery gray eyes shone from beneath his helm, through which protruded two short onyx horns. From the description I had been provided, I knew this to be Echerin, retainer of Vekker. Past him, hovering just above the ground, a half a mile or more distant, wrapped in a cloak of shadow that left her barely visible, except for a shock of white hair and two bright yellow eyes, was the second retainer, Mawar of Idril. Echerin swept the glaive across his body, and a wave of dark fire attribute mana spilled across the sky in an arc. Condensing the ice further around my body, I crossed my arms in front of me and plunged into the flames. Ice hissed and cracked as the flames sputtered and withered. I punched out on the other side, my arms slashed outward, and two blades of ice carved through the air before me and closed like scissors towards Echerin's neck. He brought his burning glaive up, catching both attacks. There was a burst of the dark fire. A flaming echo of my spell flew in reverse back to me. I changed direction. So that's kind of crazy. He reversed the spell and sent it back. I changed direction, dipped into my left, but the burning echoes followed as if tethered to me. I swerved again as a series of black bolts of mana launched by Mawar burst all around me like so many dark fireworks. Casters, fall back! Attack from a safe distance, Echerin ordered, his voice booming through the battleground below. Strikers, shields, sentries, focus on protecting your casters. The rear lines of the Alacrian forces had avoided the worst of my spell and were now scrambling back towards Mawara's location. Some few survivors of the falling ice clouds also managed to pick themselves up and drag themselves through the shattered landscape of the broken rock and shards of ice. I picked up short as the glaive flew just in front of me, then rapidly hurled a series of frozen crescents towards Echerin. Dark fire enveloped him, and the crescents shattered ineffectively against his armor. Every nerve in my body lit aflame as the echo of the twin blades caught me from behind. They didn't burn flesh or bone, but I felt them carving through my mana and burning up something I couldn't name within me. Rapidly... Why is she getting fucked up like this, yo? Breathing rapidly, I dropped beneath a volley of spellfire from a pocket of Alacrian casters, then reached down toward the atmospheric mana around Echerin. The heat of his flames pushed back any natural cold or moisture in the air, so I poured out my own. Willing the air to freeze as solid as the deepest permafrost, a crystalline barrier of ice formed in the air around the retainer, gleaming in the sunlight that hadn't yet been swallowed by the fresh cloud cover. But where the black fire touched my ice, the two forces split and snapped, breaking each other. So it seemed like her strongest ice spell is like even with his soul fire. I mean, basically she is like her offense isn't strong enough to get through the soul fire is what's happening right now. It seemed like it's even actually, because they like cracked and like that's the way she said it. The black fire touched my ice and the two forces split and snapped. So they both split. The fire split and her permafrost ice split, breaking each other. A jagged bolt of lightning sparked across my back, and damn, she got hit again. Oh yeah, it come from the casters. The casters are hurling spells at her. A jagged bolt of lightning sparked across my back, and I went into a spin to avoid several other spells targeting me. Within the cage of ice, Echerin was momentarily distracted, his focus on holding my spell at bay. When his glaive returned to him, however, it shattered the ice and snapped back into his hand. Yeah, her defense and her offense isn't stronger than the soul fire, man. A flick of my wrist sent dozens of spears of ice raining down on the closest Alacrian soldiers. Some burst against shields, but many more found their targets, and more mana signatures went dark on the ground below. Echerin flew forward, and his sudden movement causing a burst of noise and leaving a visible trail in the air. The burning glaive spun and leaving behind a black afterimage. The ice of my left arm extended out into a shield, while a sword formed from many layers of overlapping blue ice appeared in my right hand. I smashed the glaive aside with the shield and so her shield is able to deflect the blade. Okay. And thrust the sword at his hip. Shadows emanating Moir's dark signature condensed around him, forming into seething tentacles that wreathed wildly as they caught and deflected my blows. The glaive twirled and came down on the top edge of my shield. The half flexed, and the blade parted the hairs atop my head. I thrust up and away with the shield, then forward, smashing his gauntleted fist. As the shield went up, I drove the point of my sword down toward his legs, but again, the shadowy tentacles deflected my blow. It must be her in the back with the shadowy tentacles that's like giving him extra defense. Because it seems like he's all offense, and then the other one is like really good defense. But if she can't beat his offense, and then she can't beat her defense, then she's not going to win this fight. Egerin pushed off my shield, flying into a backflip before thrusting forward again with the burning glaive. The impact of the blade against my shield rocked me back, and I felt the follow-up strike glance off my ice-covered side. I snapped my arm down, pinning the haft against my ribs, and swung the edge of my sword toward his shoulder. A shadowy tentacle wrapped around my arm, but I twisted my wrist and drove the point of the ice blade into the gap between Egerin's gorget and helmet. It trembled against his mana and was turned aside, but I felt them jerk next to me and saw blood at the tip of my sword. As we fought, dozens of spells from the soldiers on the ground continued to hiss through the air all around us. Egerin attempted to pull back and collect himself, but I kept his weapon trapped at my side. The shadow tentacles emerging from the dark crevices of his armor snapped and cut like blade whips, punching into my shield and sending cracks spiderwebbing across its surface. A sharp pain radiated out from my shoulder, and I pirouetted away from the offending shadow, ripping the glaive from Egerin's grasp. Several more spells from the remaining soldiers struck me, and there was a sharp tug from my core as mana surged out to maintain my protective barriers. Egerin eased back, watching me warily. You lances are more potent than I expected. You have fought well and earned a clean death. His weariness melted away, and the glaive jerked free of my grip painfully, flew through the air, and settled back into his fist. He smiled haughtily or whatever. Do not despair. Your people are simply unprepared to face the true might of the Alacrian continent. As he had been speaking, the core of his spear was freezing. The core of his spear was freezing solid, my ice overtaking the runes embedded in the haft. The blade flames moved jerkily, then froze in place around his arm. Unnoticed by the retainer, it wasn't until the frost had crept halfway up his arm that he noticed its burn through his heavy gauntlets. Egerin cursed and tried to toss the weapon away, but it was frozen to his hand. I met his eyes as they widened. My own face showed no emotion. I offer you death in return, Alacrian, but it would not be clean. So how did she do? She must have done something when she had the glaive like pitted up against her. She must have done some spell or something like that while she was holding it. So then when he got it back, she was able to activate it. And the motherfucker was too busy talking and too confident that he didn't even notice that the ship was freezing. Flying backwards towards his allies, Egerin continued to flail with the spear, attempting to free himself of the creeping ice that now covered his entire arm up to his pauldrons. The protective shadows conjured by Moira receded as the other retainer left him to his fate, prompting him to turn around and shout, "Help me, damn it!" The spells continued flying from the retainer of their army, but I deflected them with a sparkling curtain of ice attribute mana, which also pinned Egerin in, preventing him from retreating. His left hand was clawing at his right arm, the metal gauntlet scraping audibly across the layers of ice. This clawing became hammering as he drove his fist into the frozen appendage. With a sound of shattering crystal, his right arm broke off just below the shoulder, it and the spear tumbling together toward the ground 100 feet below. But the ice was in his mana veins, and from there, his channels. Normally, the barrier of his flesh would have prevented me from controlling the mana this way, but his own weapon and runes worked against him. as his magic bonded to mine to create the echo effects he had used to attack me earlier. In moments, the ice reached its core, and then he was falling. Gray eyes stared up at me in disbelief, and I watched as frost crept over them, turning the silver gray to a blind blue white. When he struck the ground, he exploded into rough chunks of frozen red and bone white. So that's cool, though. That's cool. So she couldn't overpower him physically, but tactically she was able to do something with the runes and the little glaive that he was so confident in. So smarts went out once again. The spellfire from the remaining Alacrians momentarily eased. Taking a deep breath, I refocused myself on mana rotation. My core ached from the effort of overcoming Etrian's mana, and I had a retainer to face. As I did this, I flew down to the ground and picked up the frozen glaive, which had survived the fall intact. Flying only a few feet over the ground, I approached the Alacrian army. Mawar now hovered at the front, watching me with an unreadable expression. The retainer had short, bright white hair that stood up in a series of spikes. Her predatory yellow eyes followed me closely out of the midnight black flesh, and most of her body was indistinct, lost in a cloak of moving shadow. I held up the glaive in one hand, parallel with the line of soldiers, then squeezed forcefully. The frozen haft shattered, and the two ends tumbled from my grip. I will give you all this one chance. Arthur Lewin is under my protection, as is this continent. Leave it now, return to your high sovereign, and tell him that he has failed. Do not return. Mawar didn't outwardly express any emotion at my statement. Kill her. My hand shot toward the sky, then dragged downward. A hail of ice spikes rained down on the force, manifesting from shreds of pale clouds that had filled in above us. The soldiers collapsed in disarray as their shields struggled to hold off the bombardment, while the remaining casters and strikers just fought to stay alive. So her abilities are really good at like mopping up mobs and mobs of people. All her AoE effects are just crazy. A frozen dart and wreathing bladed whips formed a shadowy mana snapped and speared at me from Mawar, yeah. And whenever they cut, the color bled from the surrounding area, leaving it cold and devoid of atmospheric mana. I dodged rapidly between strikes, building up my next spell. Ice attribute mana filled in a space the size of my fist, condensing until it became visible as a transparent floating sphere. As I fitted across the battlefield, dodging Mawar's attack, I put all of my mana toward this sphere. The transparent shell darkened, becoming white, then growing denser and taking on a blue color. I imbued into it not just mana by my intention, giving the spell both power and purpose. When an open between the attacks appeared, I unleashed the sphere. It flashed toward the retainer, leaving a line of frozen air behind it. Mawar gave a warning shout and melted into shadow, flitting away. The sweat on my brow froze as I gritted my teeth against the strain of the spell. As if I were pulling against thousands of pounds, struggled to twist my wrist even slightly, causing the ice crystal sphere to turn sharply and follow behind the streak of shadow. The air freezing behind it as it flew into the center mass of the retainer's shadowy form. Mawar jerked to a stop, appearing as nothing more than a swirling incorporeal mess, at the center of which the ice crystal sphere was spinning rapidly in place. The trail of frozen air, as the spear had left behind, fell to the ground, shattered. Tendrils of ice snapped through the shadows like bright blue lightning. Steam was rising from the shadow in a cloud, and where the cloud spilled over nearby soldiers, they screamed and their skin blackened from the cold. Pain erupted from my leg as a bladed tentacle pierced the ice of my armor and my layer of protective mana. It parted flesh, cracked bone, and then struck out the other side of my calf. I sank to one knee, largely ignoring the wound as I tightened my focus on the spell. The flashes of cold came in bursts, overwhelming my enemy's defenses with sudden spikes of power, and inch by inch, the shadows solidified. Suddenly, the vaguely inhuman shaped shadow burst apart in a soft puff of black ice, and Mawar melted away. In the same moment, something slammed into me from behind. I was thrown onto my face, then dragged up from the frozen ground by the tentacle piercing my leg. Upside down, I met Moira's emotionless gaze. She was wrapped in shadow, 40 feet behind me, unharmed by the sphere of ice that was still pulsing and flashing. I thought she got killed, man. I really did. Spells slammed into me from every direction, and I could only harden my barrier against them. The effort sent a quickening ache through my core, and I felt the leading edge of backlash cutting through my focus. She got to do something real quick with this sphere because she ain't got no mana left. With a jerk of my limbs, I sent the sphere through the heart of the Alacrian army. Each pulse flash froze a dozen men or more, but there were no cries of pain. They died with the air frozen solid in their lungs. The spellfire let up as mages dove out of the spell's path. But the more the tentacles were grabbing and striking me. Some turned aside, but others broke through my armor, and wounds began to accumulate all over my body. The ice crystal sphere curved around, passing through where Moir stood, and again she melted away. I fell from the air, spun, and landed on my feet. The sphere was moving in a spiral pattern through the battlefield, and when it closed in on me, I grabbed hold of it and drew it back into my body, reabsorbing the mana I had spent in the castle. She can do that? That's crazy as hell. A stabbing pain came from my core. I gasped and fell to my knees, clutching at my sternum as if I could dig it out of me. Something was wrong. Maybe she did something to the sphere? Reabsorbing the mana should have eased the backlash, not intensified it. Looking up slowly, realization dawning bitter and unwelcome. I watched as Moir, once again, hidden behind her remaining soldiers, raised a hand and shouted her orders. The Alacrian forces rushed back into formation, and dozens of spells again hissed through the air in my direction. My head snapped back as the pain reached a crescendo. Never before had backlash felt as if something were ripping and clawing at my core from the inside. I grew cold and frightened, knowing that the retainer's shadow magic could be doing to me something like I'd just done to Etrian. The army spell closed in on me. As one, the spell stopped. I blinked away tears, staring at the dozens of elemental bullets, balls of fire, bolts of lightning, streaming rays of yellow and green mana that were hovering in the air around me. Time seemed to freeze. Slowly, so very slowly, the core in my sternum cracked. What's going on right now? Slowly, so very slowly, the core in my sternum cracked. I could feel the pieces begin to separate from each other. The frigid claws of death beckoned to me, but I held them at bay. If I was to perish here, then I would not die alone. Utilizing mana rotation, I fought to keep drawing in and cycling the mana that my core was no longer capable of manipulating properly, trying to shape and condense it to burst out like a bomb. I felt something, some primal recognition, sparking my mind just as my core split open. Is she going past the white core level right now? A scream ripped free of me, and with it, a nova of bright blue mana. My thing is this though. It seems like her core is about to explode from whatever happened with that sphere and her absorbing it. And she's about to die. But what's got me confused is the fact that all the spells like froze. Why would time just freeze like that though? I felt something primal recognition sparking my mind just as my core split open. A scream ripped free of me, and with a nova of bright blue mana, as if seeing myself from above, detached from my own body, I watched as the nova moved outward, consuming the floating spells before colliding with the enemy force. In an instant, 100 mages froze solid, and their bodies clear as glass. The expanding nova rippled, and cracks ran through it. Then it was reversing. Sucked back into me in a blink. The explosion that followed shattered the glass soldiers and my consciousness both. I mean, I don't know. Because if she was about to just die, like, did her soul get, like, how was she watching herself die? As if seeing myself from above, detached from my own body. It's like she's a spirit now? But what happened with the sphere, though? Did Mawar do something to the sphere? But then, like, the explosion went out. The Nova moved outward, consuming the floating spells, and they collided with the enemy forces, and then all of them froze. And then the spell rippled, and then cracks ran through it. And then it reversed. And it sucked back into her. Like, that don't make sense. Like, if it was just an explosion, wouldn't it just go out? Why would it suck back in? I don't know. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think. I think she's not dead. I think something's going on with her core. It almost seemed like an implosion almost. Like how it went out and then back in. Like, I don't know. Like her core cracking and shit. Like, I don't know. But it's definitely interesting. It's definitely interesting. So, I'm gonna get out of here. Shit, I've been over so long. So I would give this chapter about a 7 out of 10 as far as my enjoyment. Last chapter with Arthur, King Arthur, and Queen Tessia, I'll give that chapter like a 9. Like a 9.5 probably. I like that chapter. Seeing Arthur, King Arthur, all of that Catholic, like that shit's crazy. And then the motherfucker get assassinated because he's too successful. That shit's crazy too. But you think our ice magic absorbed the surrounding mana? But that don't make sense though, because mana, see that don't make sense, because mana is just mana. Like, you know, there's fire mana, there's wind mana, there's fire, there's water, there's wind, and there's earth. She uses air and wind and ice, or I said air and wind. She uses air and water, or wind and water and ice as the deviant. So she wouldn't be able to interact with the fire and the earth mana at all. So I don't think that her magic could just absorb ambient mana like she can control all the elements. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I don't even want to speculate anymore, because I truly just I do not know. Is the new season dropped? The new season of what? What are you talking about, Deeper? The new season of what? Before I get out of here, I'm curious what you're talking about. Integration stage. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that it was like an implosion, and she's going to the next level past White Core. But I'm more so curious about what happened with that sphere, because that's kind of crazy to me that she can make something like external from herself and have all her mana, or a large amount of her mana, and then use it and control it, wipe people out, and then suck it back in to get her mana back. But when she sucked it back in, it seemed like that was the reaction that caused all this shit to happen. But I thought that it happened because maybe Mawar did something to the sphere, and when she brought it back in, it like poisoned her core or something. But like, it don't make sense. And then, like I said, if she was about to die, why wouldn't it be like an icy cold death? You know, she's going through backlash and she's about to die. But she said, like, she's like detached, like looking down on herself and shit. Like I think she's going to the next level. I think that's what this is. She's the strongest out of all the other the other lances. She's always been the strongest out of all the other lances. She did her training, and now she's going to integration. But here's my thing though. Will her integration, will it be the same as Cecilia's integration? Because I don't think so. I think that Cecilia's integration allows her to control all of the mana, right? All the mana, all the elements, she can do everything. I think Veray's integration is she's gonna have master control over air, water, and ice, to where she can use it and manipulate it to just absurd levels, to where she has like the same amount of control that Cecilia has over the other, the same amount of control that Cecilia has over all the elements. She's gonna have that control, but only over air and water and ice. That's what I'm thinking. But we don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But yeah, we'll see though. But that's cool though. If that's what happens, that'd be cool as hell. That would be cool. But listen, I appreciate y'all joining in. Y'all drop a like for the video. Help me out. I appreciate that. And I'm gonna see you guys in the next video, man. The next video is gonna be a He Who Fights with Monsters. I'm gonna start that back up again. So y'all should see part 5, I believe. So yeah, just check that out. That series has been doing pretty good. And I'll just check you guys out in the next video. Peace.